you might be an unmarried couple. You could live together for 40 years. And if one of you has a stroke or is in an accident and ends up in the hospital, if you're not married, your long-term partner might not have any legal ability to visit you in the hospital, to talk to your doctors, to make decisions on your behalf.
Right.
That might fall to your parents or your sibling who you haven't talked to in decades. So really, unmarried couples, it's even more important for them to sit down and prepare a plan than it is for married couples because they don't have any of those protections that the law puts in place.
Welcome to the Answers for Elders radio show.
And welcome, everyone, to Answers for Elders Radio Network, heard across the USA and on your favorite podcast channel. And we are here back with Andrea Lee, who is an estate planning and elder law attorney in Washington State, with Legacy Estate Planning in Bellevue, Washington. And Andrea and I are going to be talking about some topics that might be really relevant. And today, we just finished a series for those of you, if you have a spouse or a loved one that has a special need, but we're going to kind of shift the landscape here a little bit. And we're going to talk a little bit about unmarried couples. There's a lot of people that choose not to get married. They've been married, they cohabitate, or they mix their assets together. They'll buy a home or whatever. Andrea, you probably are seeing that a lot. Are you not?
I see a number of unmarried couples walk through my doors. A lot of them are younger, but some of them are older. Unfortunately, there are some retirement plans, there are some benefits where if a surviving spouse gets remarried, they might lose some benefits. It's, it's kind of some old rules in place, and people don't want to give up money that they are earning because of a death of their first spouse by getting remarried. So I do.
Yeah, military pensions.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of people who, hey, they would love to get remarried, but they are concerned about potentially the loss of a military pension or some other benefit that they might have received. I think through the railroad, there might be some old plans out there that end if someone gets remarried. It's super unfortunate, but it's just the reality.
Right, right.
And it's actually a very common theme that I see it for a lot of younger individuals. I think less people are getting married, more people are choosing to live together before they get married. But under the laws of the state of Washington and in most states and throughout the country, there are a lot of kind of protections built in place for married couples. But unfortunately, some of those protections don't extend to individuals who live together.
Social Security.
Social Security is absolutely one of them. Another is
Medicare,
Medicaid. If somebody needs Medicaid benefits, what can we preserve? What can we not preserve? So it definitely is a discussion that people need to have if they decide to live together, which is, hey, how do we plan? How do we protect each other's? And how do you protect yourself if you choose to live with a partner?
Yeah, good point. And when you think about, that piece alone, how many people they maybe come to that, maybe they got together later in life, they both have their own separate assets, and they probably have children that may be their heirs, but they also want to take care of that partner. So Andrea, how do you address and what is your philosophy on helping that type of situation?
So there's a couple different ways as attorneys that we can represent unmarried couples. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the estate planning they should consider putting in place. I am going to talk a little bit about, Medicaid and benefits that people might look at if they are unmarried and how it's treated differently for unmarried couples. But if a couple comes in, we want to sit down and decide, hey, as an attorney, who do we represent in this scenario? Because we can legally represent an unmarried couple if they're planning together. So if they are treating each other like a married couple, we're putting everything on the table. Legally, we
Mhm.
can represent a married couple jointly as estate planning attorneys and
Yeah.
as
I
elder
think
law
what we call it is a domestic partnership. Is that a common phrase?
There's so many different terms for it, and different
Okay.
states have different terms. So that is the one thing that we do need to keep in mind is some some laws are federal and they apply throughout the country, and some laws are very specific to each state. And
Got it.
the way that each state treats long-time cohabitants, like domestic partners, or you sometimes they call it meretricious relationships. They don't call that in Washington.
Common law.
Common law marriages.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's different names and there are different rules in different states
Yeah.
and how each state interprets those relationships and what rights are bestowed upon different individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Interesting.
so the first thing as an attorney that we always need to determine is who is our client. That's one of the first things attorneys always have to do. And we can ethically represent unmarried couples, but we sometimes don't. So we might have someone come in, they might reside together, they might own a home together, but they might not legally plan together. In which case, as attorneys, we need to represent only the individuals that we
Oh,
deem as our
interesting.
clients.
Yeah. So like you were talking about, if they both have assets, maybe they're giving their assets to their children, separate children, then that is considered a obviously they're not they don't own property. I guess there's the question of, what is hers, what is his, and what is ours. Is that correct?
Well, it can absolutely become very, very tricky for
Mhm.
second marriage situations.
Yeah.
Whenever people come to us and they are a little more mature, they own assets. They own
Mhm.
assets. If you get married, we would encourage you to do a prenuptial agreement. If you're not married, you could do a cohabitation agreement.
Right.
So, because we all like to think that our partners love us and will do what's in our best interest and will always put us first. But the reality is, even married couples can each have their own will. They can each retain their own counsel. So if you're an unmarried couple and you're residing together, even if you own a home together, there is the possibility that one partner could go retain an attorney, draft a will, create a trust that says, hey, when I die, my half of the house goes to my kids, or my half of the house goes to the Humane
Yeah.
Society. And so it can be very tricky for unmarried couples or even married couples to plan.
Right.
They don't plan
Right.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, in that scenario, so you're representing one individual or two. So obviously there's different considerations, is there not?
Oh, absolutely. So, the first thing, number one, I'm going to presume that an unmarried couple might want to come in and plan together. That they want to have their their facts laid out on the table. That they want their partner to be aware of the plan that they're creating. That they do want to plan as a couple. If people want to plan separately, it can be much more difficult, and people have the right to do so, and sometimes we do. But it's easier in some circumstances to plan together,
Hmm.
oftentimes. The first thing that I always want my unmarried couples to think about are things like power of attorneys, even healthcare powers of attorneys. Because,
Amen on that one.
yeah, the reality is if people are married and one person becomes incapacitated, whether that's due to a car accident or an illness, even if they don't have a healthcare power of attorney, there are some default laws that protect your spouse and allow them to be the person making decisions for you. If you don't have a healthcare power of attorney, the statutes of the state of Washington pretty much say, hey, if I don't have a healthcare power of attorney, then my spouse gets to make decisions for me.
And if you
However,
don't have a spouse,
if you don't have a spouse, you might be an unmarried couple. You could live together for 40 years. And if one of you has a stroke or is in an accident and ends up in the hospital, if you're not married, your long-term partner might not have any legal ability to visit you in the hospital, to talk to your doctors, to make decisions on your behalf.
Right.
That might fall to your parents or your sibling who you haven't talked to in decades. So really, unmarried couples, it's even more important for them to sit down and prepare a plan than it is for married couples because they don't have any of those protections that the law puts in place for
Right.
couples.
And you think about too, there's a lot of LGBTQ couples. Not luckily they can get married now, but there's a lot of them that have been married, that have been together for decades and they've accumulated assets together. But again, that lies into back to the first question of, are they doing everything together? That would be similar, wouldn't it? As far as who's the client.
100%. So, like I said, it's definitely easier if they plan together. You don't have to plan together. But in that situation that you just discussed, you could have a couple, whether they're LGBTQ or not, who've resided together for decades, who've
Mhm.
built wealth together, who
Right.
maybe even have children together. I don't know.
Mhm.
And if one of them dies, and if that not have a will, then that long-term partner is
Mhm.
not necessarily legally entitled to anything or any
Yeah.
part of that individual's estate.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the challenges that a surviving partner or would face if they co-owned a home with
Yeah.
their non-spouse and their partner passes away, and now they're thrust in a situation where, because that partner did not create a will, leaving or a trust, or did not create any type of document that leaves that house
Mhm.
to that surviving partner, that they lose the house. They have to sell it. They need to pay off their loved ones' parents or siblings. So for unmarried couples, it's particularly important that they sit down with an estate planning attorney and create a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Moral of the story, take care of business. Sometimes it's really, you don't want to have the formality of the piece of paper, but this is important in so many ways. And, I am so glad we've covered this topic.
Thank you, Suzanne, and I hope to see you again soon.
Did you know that you can discover hundreds of podcasts in our library on senior care? So visit our website and discover our decision guides that will help you also navigate decision making. Find us at answersforelders.com.